Hi, friends. Susan Blackwell from the Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the Chief Creative Officer and Chief Marketing Officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you and to save with early bird discounts. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk. Go to thesparkfile.com/Illume and join us for Illume.
The Sparkfile podcast may contain profanity and other adult content.
Please use your discretion.
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I want to make or how I want to be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
Welcome to the Spark File, where we believe that everyone is creative, but smart creative people don't go it alone.
I'm Laura Camian.
And I'm Susan Blackwell, and we are creativity coaches who help people fear less, create more, and bring their creative visions to life.
If you are an OG member of the Sparkfile community, well, welcome back, Sparkler.
If you're joining us for the first time, welcome, friend.
Know that just by listening to this podcast, you are joining a warm and wonderful clan of creatives.
But hold the phone. You may be asking yourself, what exactly is a Spark File?
Hey, a Sparkfile is a place where you consistently collect all your inspirations and fascinations.
If you're like us and you're making stuff all the time, or you want to be making stuff all the time, you know, if you're not careful, your campfire of creativity can flicker out.
But do not despair. We're collecting kindling in the form of fresh ideas, images, and inspiration that spark creativity and pique curiosity.
To light a fire under our collective asses to make things like this podcast.
Or a healthy relationship with that overly vocal voice in your head. Every episode, we're going to reach into our spark files and exchange some sparks. And from time to time, we're going to talk to some folks who spark us too.
You know what that means, everybody? We have more sparks than we can possibly use in this lifetime.
So if something lights you up, we encourage you, please take that thing and make something out of it.
Without further ado, let's open up the Spark File.
Ooh,
I'm a lady.
Oh, hello.
Ooh.
You're a very gilded age.
Ooh,
Gilded age.
my precious jewels. Laura Camian, hi.
Hi, Sus.
I can't stop thinking about the spark that you did about Wordle.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Tell
Now,
me more.
will you refresh my memory about the what do we make of it takeaways that you presented were?
Sure. I sure can.
Hit me with those takeaways.
Yeah, I can tell you that. I think what we make of it, we make things we love.
Make things we love.
Specifically, make things you love.
Yep.
Know that you cannot make everyone happy. Start by making you happy. And know that if you have any amount of success, you will also have criticism. Period. Full stop. It's going to happen. And you will survive it.
So here's my what do we make of it? That came to me after the fact. We have to have a safe word, Laura Camian, and the safe word is going to be Wordle.
Oh.
And that is like if we get a piece of criticism, if we made something that we were really proud of and we loved, and then somebody was like, I hated
Someone
it.
pooped on it.
Yes. then we just say Wordle. And just to remind ourselves that we made something that we loved and it is inevitable. If you're going to make something, somebody's not going to like it.
Wordle. They wordled it.
Wordle. I don't know. I don't know if it's powerful enough to keep me from getting sucked into the rejection sensitive dysphoria swirl, but it can't hurt. A little disruptor, a little hashtag Wordle.
A little disruptor. It's the price of admission.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. If you want anyone to see your work, it's the price of admission. Wordle. It's going to get wordled.
It's going to get wordled.
It's going to be hugely popular. And then there's going to be a contingent of people who are like, I don't like you liking that.
And also just like nothing is for everybody.
Nothing is for everyone.
I think there's that part of me, that people pleasing part of me that's still just like, but I want everybody to like everything I make.
I mean, I think those days, if they ever were here, they were certainly pre-internet and they probably weren't here. It was just that like those voices, maybe you didn't get heard. They certainly didn't get amplified. So you might have had universal good reviews and that's that. End of story. And now it's just everyone is a reviewer. It will not be universal. Either way.
Wordle,
girl.
Wordle. I love that spark. Anyway, we're not here to talk about old sparks. We're here to talk about new sparks.
I got a new one, Suze.
A freshie?
A freshie.
I love a freshie.
It's kind of fresh, but it's been bouncing around in my head for a while. This is one of those sparks that I've been thinking about writing. But then when I sit down to write, I can't think of an entry point. Like, I don't know where to begin.
Yeah.
So I sit and I look at a blank page until I become distracted by something else and I move on.
Yes.
So I'm taking my own advice and writing the opening paragraph about writing the opening paragraph rather than writing the opening paragraph, if you know what I mean.
It's very meta. It's very title of show. I love it.
Oh, it's very much. And it's that writing technique we talk about with all of our clients. It's like, well, if you're looking at a blank page, just start writing about what you think you might be writing about, and then you'll get into it.
Yeah.
Even as I'm reading this to you now, I still haven't written my opening paragraph, but we've already started. So here we go. So there we go.
We're in
it. So you know me, Suze, and you've known me for a long time. And you know that I have written plays where the voice in our head plays a very central character. It's a topic that I've been fascinated with my whole life. I think it's because, speaking for myself, I know I've had a very active inner voice ever since I can remember. You the same, I imagine?
Oh my gosh. I wonder what age you were, and I wonder what age I was when we actually could cognate that thought. We could observe it and say, I am not my thoughts.
I am not that thought.
That's just a little thought that's being kicked up by that little cluster of cells in my left hemisphere of my brain.
It is so interesting that you said that, because I think at some point in the spark, we're going to dig into that a little bit. I think. If I don't, then circle back.
Okay.
I'm happy to say that my inner voice doesn't control me as much as it once did. This voice isn't as loud as it used to be. Like, it doesn't interrupt my life as much as it once did. But I'm still quite fascinated with the role that it plays in our day-to-day existence and how it affects our quality of life and sometimes our creativity as well. I've gone through difficult times in my life. You could call some of them traumas. And I've had months, if not years, of trying to quiet the voice in my head. I've been guilty of leaning on my sister for hours on end, processing what happened. And she would just be with me as my mind like spun around like a washing cycle. And I tried desperately to find a way to disrupt the thoughts.
Yeah.
Of course, I can see now that I was processing trauma. I can recognize it now and see it in others when they're stuck in a thought spinning around in their mind and they can't see the way out. You and I, when working with clients, will often say this is an inside job because it is so rare that someone else can help you stop that spin.
Yeah.
So, of course, when I heard about the book Chatter, The Voice in Our Head, Why It Matters, and How to Harness It by Ethan Kross, you know I was going to dig into that. So first of all, Ethan Kross, the author, Wow. Kross is a neuroscientist and one of the world's leading experts on controlling the conscious mind. Suze, you sometimes talk about what you call thought work.
Yes.
Well, Kross has dedicated his entire life to thought work.
I'm so fucking into this, Spark.
It's so amazing. He's a professor at University of Michigan's psychology department and its Ross School of Business. At the university, he founded the Emotion and Self-Control Laboratory.
Jeez Louise.
I mean, I read that. I'm going to read it again. Emotion and Self-Control Laboratory. I saw that and I was like, what? Stop right there. What even is that? I need to know more. So in his book, he says the lab he founded and the lab he directs does research on the silent conversations people have with themselves, which powerfully influence how we live our lives. He has spent his entire professional career researching these conversations, what they are, why we have them, how they can be harnessed to make people happier, healthier, and more productive. He goes on to explain that they use tools from psychology and other disciplines, fields as diverse as medicine, philosophy, biology, and computer science, to answer questions like, why are some people able to benefit from focusing inward to understand their feelings, while other people crumble when they engage in the exact same behavior? How can people reason wisely when under toxic stress? Are there right and wrong ways to talk to yourself? How can we communicate with people we care about without stoking their negative thoughts and emotions or increasing our own? Do the countless voices of others we encounter on social media affect the voices in our mind? Oof, they're working on all of these questions all of the time. And much of what they've learned has gone into this book.
Wow.
I'm in awe of this entire project. I mean, that he has essentially created a place for the study of the voices in our head specifically.
Yes.
Okay, so Kross explains that he grew up in a household where his dad encouraged him all the time to, quote, go inside himself, or just go inside, or ask yourself the question. And really what he was learning to do, right?
Yes.
Learning to self-reflect.
Yes.
Or the idea of introspection. I call it thinking about your thoughts. So he had all of these codes, these different things, go inside himself, go inside, think about your thoughts, whatever you want to call it. It's introspection.
Yeah.
Do you remember, Suze, the first person or the first time you were encouraged to think about your thoughts?
I don't know.
So I thought about this. The earliest that I can remember was associated with being in trouble. We were sent to our rooms and told to think about what we'd done, reflect on it, essentially, and then we'd have to come out, say what we had done, why it was wrong, and apologize for it. And I think that was my earliest recollection of self-reflection.
Huh.
But I also wonder, like, wow, it seems poignant to me that it was always associated with what I had done wrong.
Yeah.
This is what you do when you've done something wrong. You self-reflect. Not like that self-reflection in any other way or any other time could be useful. It's not the place you go to find the answer you need. It's the place you go to think about what you've done wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. I wonder if that's why my voice in my head got really good at assessing what I had done wrong.
Oh, yeah.
All the time, right?
Sure.
I had to train it over the years to sort of widen its scope. But in its most basic sense, Kross says introspection simply means actively paying attention to one's own thoughts and feelings. The ability to do this is what allows us to imagine, remember, reflect, and then use those reveries to problem solve, innovate, and create. Hooray for creativity. Yes. So many scientists, including Kross, believe that the ability for introspection is the evolutionary advance that distinguishes humans from other species. Kross's dad really believed that going inside would be of benefit and would lead to wise decisions and ultimately a more fulfilling life. And that theory made perfect sense. However, as Kross and his team have discovered, There is a growing body of evidence that while introspection and self-reflection can be wonderful and beneficial to learning, growing, imagining, and creating, it can also be the wrong thing at the wrong time and result in some really negative outcomes.
Tell me more.
Suze, here's what he means. According to Kross, a new body of research has demonstrated that when we experience distress, engaging in introspection often does significantly more harm than good. It can undermine our performance at work. It can interfere with our ability to make good decisions and negatively influence our relationships. Using the mind to engage with our thoughts and feelings in the wrong way can lead professional athletes to lose the skills they've spent a lifetime perfecting. It can cause otherwise rational, caring people to make less logical and even less moral decisions. It can lead friends to flee from you in both real world and social media world. It can even contribute to us aging faster, both in how we look on the outside and how our DNA is configured internally. In short, our thoughts too often don't save us from our thoughts. Instead, they can give rise to something insidious, and that insidious thing is chatter. Kross describes chatter as the cyclical, negative thoughts and emotions that turn our singular capacity for introspection into a curse rather than a blessing. What he means, essentially, this is that spin cycle. When a negative thought gets put on repeat, and you cannot disrupt that pattern, it becomes chatter. I see you nodding your head. Have you ever had this, Suze?
Well, I've heard another name for it, which is ants, automatic negative thoughts.
Interesting.
So maybe it's similar to this chatter you speak of.
It might be. It could be related. I think that it becomes chatter when it gets put on repeat.
Yeah.
When it becomes a cycle and people are stuck in the cycle of that, reprocessing and reprocessing and reprocessing the negative thing that was said or done or felt.
Oh my God, Laura, I get pulled into this space. I do. From time to time, I get pulled into this space, and it is not a fun place to be.
It's not a fun place to be. And we've all been there. And we have also been on the receiving end of that. You know what I mean? We have been with people who are stuck in it.
Yes.
And we ourselves have been stuck in it.
Yes.
So it turns out humanity has grappled with this inner voice throughout time. As Kross points out in his book, early Christian mystics were thoroughly annoyed by the voice in their head, always intruding on their silent contemplation. Some even considered these voices demonic. Around the same time, in the East, Chinese Buddhists theorized about the turbulent mental weather that could cloud one's emotional landscape. They called it deluded thought. And yet, many of these very same ancient cultures believed that their inner voice was also a source of wisdom, a belief that undergirds several millennia-old practices like silent prayer and meditation. The fact that multiple spiritual traditions have both feared our inner voice and noted its value speaks to the ambivalent attitudes to our internal conversations that still persist today. So I was fascinated by that because I've often talked to my therapist about learning to discern when my inner voice is intuition, it's giving me the answer that I need, and when is my inner voice fear or just repeating negative chatter.
Fear v. intuition.
Right?
Always tricky.
Discerning the difference is key. To help us discern, first we need to understand what is the purpose of our inner voice in the best case scenario. When our inner voice is functioning appropriately, what's it doing? The key takeaway here is that our inner voice evolved over time to help us evaluate our past and prepare for our future.
Yes.
That's part of what it does. So it's doing this in a variety of ways. It's multitasking for us. Here's some of the things that it does. First of all, it provides support with working memory. Like when you go to the store and you're repeating to yourself, okay, we need eggs, we need coffee, we need clementines. eggs, coffee, clementines, eggs, coffee, clementines. This is your working memory. We need that, and that helps us remember things throughout the day. We also need the inner voice for storytelling, specifically the creation of stories in our head that make sense of the world and shape our identity. We use it for self-control, and this is deep. I'm not going to get into all of it here, so please pick up this book if this interests you at all. But in a nutshell, to the best of my ability, I'll try to capture this. The inner voice assists us with self-control in a number of ways, but to understand it, we have to go back to when we are toddlers. Our verbal development is evolving at the same time as our emotional development. And one of the ways we learn how to control ourselves, literally, is to talk ourselves through it. If you've ever seen a toddler talking to themselves or coaching themselves through something, this is exactly what they're doing. They're using their inner voice to learn how to navigate the world.
Yes.
I don't know if I've talked about my niece Bailey on this podcast very often, but I love her.
Hi, Bailey.
Hi, Boo. And I'll tell you a quick story about her now. She's 18 now. We've been thick as thieves her whole entire life. I love this human being so much. Well, when Bailey was 3, she was really scared of Santa Claus. And it just so happens that my stepmom loved Santa Claus, and she had a collection of Santas, like everywhere Santas.
Oh, wow.
So over the holidays, we would all gather there, and
You couldn't swing a dead cat without hitting a Santa.
hitting a Santa. So this one year, I was sitting in the living room, and I hear little 3-year-old Bailey. She doesn't know I'm there, but I see her and I hear her. She's slowly approaching this big stuffed Santa Claus in the corner. She was talking to herself. She was coaching herself, and she was saying, "It's okay. It's okay. It won't hurt me. Santa's okay. I can do it." And she's slowly approaching the Santa, just repeating, "It's okay."
Oh my God.
Until she finally touches it. And then after a minute, she slowly moves closer and closer until she puts her arms around it and hugs it. I get so moved just thinking about this. Like that moment, it was so beautiful to watch, just like literally watching her verbal development and her verbal stream, I guess, including these very positive coaching ideas of like, it's okay. I can do it. It's okay. It was super powerful. And her inner voice coached her all the way through it. She was learning to manage her emotions as well as her physical self-control. But we also learn other things from our environment growing up, and we internalize them. So the examples that Kross gives us are maybe your dad always repeatedly told you never to use violence to resolve a conflict. Maybe your mom repeatedly told you to never give up after a disappointment. Over time, we repeat these things to ourselves. They become part of that verbal stream that your inner voice uses. So sometimes if you've ever been in therapy and you say something and a therapist might ask, whose voice is that?
I feel like you've written whole plays about this.
Some things about this.
Yeah.
So those 2 examples I just gave were pretty positive, but you might have also repeatedly been told that you're too big for your britches, that you shouldn't stand out so much, that you're always late, that you can't keep your room clean, and on and on. And that too becomes part of our verbal stream. So then as adults, our inner voice is evaluating and regulating at all times how we're doing against that goal we said we wanted. Don't forget about our purpose and our larger mission and how we're going to get there. It's playing out scenarios and which one might be the one that could get us closer to our goal. It's helping us decide which action to take. In short, that's several ways that our inner voice impacts our self-regulation.
I just want to make sure I'm keeping up with you and I'm understanding correctly.
Yeah.
That there are certain times where our brain is developing, and at the same time, the things that are being said to us and the things that we are saying verbally out loud to ourselves are starting to form this inner voice.
They're starting to form this inner voice.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. 100%. It consists of all those things. You can change it, but
Of
those
course,
are internalized and ingrained at a certain point.
Okay.
You will be happy to know there's a whole section on Jill Bolte Taylor and her experiences, particularly what she has said about how glorious it felt to be without the inner critic for a while.
Yes, Jill Bolte
Right?
Taylor. Yes.
Yeah. And we now know that she is a devout believer, as she describes it, that paying attention to our self-talk is vitally important to our mental health. This is all to say again that the inner voice has a very important function to play in our brain and in our bodies, and it can be a real gift to us, helping us function in the world, helping us achieve goals, and more. But as Kross says, when it morphs into chatter, it is often so overwhelming that it can cause us to lose sight of this and perhaps at times wish we didn't have an inner voice at all.
Yeah.
So then the book shares in detail the many ways that if we allow our inner voice to turn into chatter, it can get in the way of our functioning in the world. Think of it this way. Our brain's executive function runs a little bit like a computer. It focuses on what's relevant. It directs our attention to the task we're trying to accomplish, whether that's writing a play or cooking a meal. And our brain will work to tune out the distractions so that we can focus. But when there is too much noise, too much data, because we are ruminating and stuck in a negative thought cycle, we literally sap the neuron we need for our executive functions. Like we literally tire it out. It can't do it all. An example of that might be if you've ever tried to read a book right after you've had an argument with a friend or your partner, you know you're not absorbing a single sentence of that book.
Right.
You keep reading that sentence over and over again. It's not happening. And that is because...
But maybe you're still ruminating on the...
That's right.
Yep.
That's right. That neuron that we need for executive function is like, I'm busy right now spinning on all this other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The higher the stakes, the more stressful situations, the more likely chatter will get in the way.
Yeah.
Chatter is also detrimental to social relationships. And oof, I really felt this. I just want to say, I'd like to confess from the top, I have been guilty of this in years past, and I've been on the receiving end of this. When our brain is stuck in a negative thought loop and there's a ton of chatter going on, we are often driven, and I mean driven, to talk to someone about it. It's like we have a compulsion to get it out, sometimes called venting. But sadly, when we're stuck in chatter, we're not able to self-regulate, and we often don't know when to stop talking, or we can't stop talking, and we end up pushing away even the most sympathetic friends. This one was one of the hardest things to consider in the moment. Please trust me when I say, again, wow, I apologize to anyone I pushed away in the past. I mean, I can think of several times in my life, and it was particularly in crisis and in trauma. I think I've trained myself more now. Now I will almost force myself not to talk about it. Go to sleep if I can. Things always look different in the morning. Hey, guess what? That's part of my verbal stream that I learned growing up. Things always look different in the morning.
That seems good.
That's a good one. That's a keeper.
Yeah.
That's a keeper. But this is what we mean when we say this is an inside job. Getting a hold of your chatter before it pushes you to take an action that you'll regret taking, or before it causes you to push away people you love, this is the assignment. So one more thing, chronic chatter can also have a negative effect on our overall health. In 2007, the author of the book, Ethan Kross, and his team did an MRI study that found that physical and emotional pain are triggered in the same parts of the brain. Emotional pain causes the body stress just like physical pain. And stress, as we know, when it becomes chronic, can lead to cardiovascular disease and cancer and more. So to me, it kind of sucks to say how horrible chatter can be for you, but you also need to keep it to yourself.
Yeah.
It feels really cruel, doesn't it? But the good news is the answers and the help we need really are within us if we look inside. I want to get into some of the answers But I also want to acknowledge at the top here, the book did not write about neurodiversity. It's referring to a neurotypical brain. So I want to just say it's not so easy to say we all have these tools, because we may not have all these tools.
Yeah. And that thing that you just said, Laura, about like the tools or the answers that we need may already be in there. I feel like also it depends on how extreme. Some of this stuff, I feel like it might be so extreme that you need professional help to access those tools.
100%. You might need professional help, and you also might need medication. I've had a doctor say to me, like, this medication does not mean you have to stay on it the rest of your life, but it could just disrupt the cycle, disrupt that loop that you're stuck in.
Totally. I feel like this is also a really super duper time to say again that Laura and I are not therapists, and this podcast is not therapy. But I've also had that experience where it's just like the gravitational pull of the chatter is so ferocious that it was only with the help of some outside help that I was able to find some extraction from it. Yeah.
100%. Some professional help. That is a perfectly appropriate place to bring all of your chatter.
Yes.
But I'm going to get into some scenarios that could help, just so you know.
Yes.
Again, as you say, we are not therapists. We are just two people trying to figure this out. But here's what we know. One of the greatest tools that we can use that is accessible to us when we choose to use it is called distancing. Because one thing that chatter does is narrow our focus. It zooms into the negative thing that we're experiencing as the problem, and it stops us from seeing anything else, literally. It's why we have the phrase, you can't see the forest for the trees. You're so focused, you can't see any of the solutions to the problem. If they're offered up by other people, you cannot see how they could possibly work. So one of the key ways to combat the chatter is to zoom out, to create distance. And you can do this in your mind. There's different scenarios you can use. Some of them I like more than others, but later, like Kross tells us, this is like a buffet. Choose the things that like work for you. One of the exercises he talks about is thinking of the difference in these scenarios. First, imagine that your partner is cheating on you with someone else. You might feel rage, betrayal, pain, any number of emotions. But then imagine if your best friend is telling you that her partner is cheating on her. You might feel more compassion. You might want to help her problem solve, think about therapy, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, you might actually be capable of thinking of a more holistic response to it. The point is, you might have more capacity for problem solving because you have a little distance from it.
Of course.
So that's what he's talking about when we talk about distance. Another example is a study they conducted with US citizens. They were asked to imagine themselves living in another country when an election takes place here. Imagine the opponent won. Participants showed a greater desire to work with the opposing political party. Again, because they had some distance.
Yeah.
So one type of distancing is fly on the wall. In this exercise, you imagine one of the negative memories in your mind that's spinning on. And now you picture that event as if it was happening to someone else, and you're just an observer in the room. In various studies, participants who used this technique experienced lower stress levels and more clarity about their problem. Another is called temporal distancing. This involves thinking about a problem, like a deadline at work that you're chattering over, some kind of stress that is spinning out inside of you. Think about yourself 10 years from now and imagine what this particular deadline is going to mean to you then.
Yeah.
Most likely, not much at all. You might also consider the past. People create distance by considering their ancestors and what their ancestors endured. And that creates distance from this particular problem, putting in perspective in a much bigger picture.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Another way to create distance is journaling, putting it all down on paper. You create a story on paper and you create distance between you and the character of you that you've put on the page. And then there is nature. Good Lord, we just continue to learn about the benefits of being in nature. And this book is no exception. There's a whole chapter dedicated to it. And Kross describes the many benefits that nature can help to create distance from our chatter. When we're in nature, our attention is often gently drawn away from ourselves. Maybe by the way a breeze tickles our skin, or a bug bite makes our arm itch, or the way a sunset reminds us how vast the world is and how small our issues are in comparison. It's as if nature was by design luring us away from that chatter. The bottom line is zooming out or creating distance can rein in the fight or flight feeling. It can dampen the emotional activity in the brain, and it can lead to less hostility and aggression. One of the other main suggestions in the book is to remember that sharing the chatter with others is not always the most helpful thing to do, as tempting as it is. Again, as I said, this one is painful to me because I think, well, shit, when a person needs it most, you're telling them they should not reach out. But I'll circle back to that in a second. Kross spends a good deal of time explaining what happens in our brain when we go over and over and over the details, venting with another person. It's called co-rumination. And the truth is, strong bonds and strong friendships can form between people when you are co-ruminating about something. Think about bitching about someone in the office or complaining about a neighbor, etc. But if that is all we do when we vent, we are not moving toward a solution.
Yeah.
And there, Kross just described my early 30s.
I was just thinking, and there, Kross just described my last week.
Oh, no, that is not true. I had a thought about this as I was writing this. One way that I think I found distance and reached out for help is by naming what is happening. I realized when I'm spinning on something, I don't think the answer is you have to keep that to yourself. But I think that I have found, and I think you do it too, a way to create the distance and reach out for help. For example, I'll say to you, "Oof, I'm dealing with some voices in my head today that are trying to bring me down."
Yes.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
And I am telling you about what's happening in my head, but I am not going over and over and over again, reliving or giving energy or validating those voices.
Well, by saying that, you're creating a bit of a space. It's sort of what he's saying about whether it's fly on the wall or that sort of a little bit of a space, a longer lens, a disruption.
Yes.
I wrote down my version of that lately has been, I'm thinking the thought that thinking the thought that I'm overwhelmed.
That's right.
I'm thinking the thought that I don't know how I'm going to get all of this done. So instead of just saying to you, Laura, I don't know how I'm going to get all of this done, and us co-ruminating about how much we have to get done, I feel like both of us are trying to habituate something different, which is has a little bit of a disruption and a little bit of a remove to it.
It has that distance. It's disruption and distance, and also not keeping it so much inside that makes it feel like this is my problem that must be kept to myself.
Yes.
I can say to you, I got this going on today. And you can say it to me, and that is enough.
Yeah.
So I offer that up both as a way to ask for help when you need it and as a way of distancing yourself from the thoughts when they come up. If you're on the receiving end of someone who is dealing with chatter and wants to vent, there are some ways that you can be compassionate and avoid co-rumination.
Ah.
The key is, number one, first acknowledge the feelings. That must be hard. You must be feeling bad. I'm sorry that happened to you. Acknowledge those feelings. And then, if you're able, try to gently help the person distance from those thoughts. If you can gently broaden the perspective, inch them a little bit further from the chatter itself, it would be so helpful. But the first part, the empathy for their feelings, is the essential part. We've all been there. If you jump right into problem solving or broadening their perspective, you're likely met with like a wall of like, that won't work. That's not possible. Here's 5 more reasons why that can't be the answer. And I've been, again, guilty on both sides, guilty of like jumping right to solving someone's problem before acknowledging their feeling and just having a moment to just acknowledge. That must feel difficult. That must feel challenging. That must be frustrating, whatever the case may be. This approach was actually codified by the New York police hostage negotiation team decades ago. Decades ago. According to Chip Massey, crisis negotiator, empathy is the quickest way to de-escalate an emotional situation. This got me thinking too. It's not in the book, but random thoughts by me. What if
Random musings by Laura Cobian.
What if we can remember to have empathy for ourselves when we're in the midst of chatter? If empathy is the quickest way to de-escalate an emotional situation, what if we're able to recognize I'm spinning out on this? What if I can have empathy for myself in that moment? I think it's worth a try. Maybe some empathy for ourselves could de-escalate the emotional situation. And finally, Kross also gives a good amount of space in the book to the idea of the placebo, something that in theory we know isn't actual medicine. It shouldn't work, but our belief in it makes it work. And he uses ritual as an example of a placebo to help control chatter. He calls ritual the ancient chatter fighting tool. The example he uses, when we lose someone we love, there are and have been throughout time various rituals of grief that give us like a sense of control and purpose when going through a very dark time or a time of loss. All of those like religious rituals, in a way, it's like it busies the person, it busies their mind. I don't want to just use death, but any number of like life moments, there are rituals.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just made me think about rituals in another way.
I'm trying to think of how, or maybe you can tell me the chatter, like specifically the chatter. Say I'm chattering on about like an old familiar chatter that chatters in my mind, just like a day-to-day type, garden variety type chatter.
Yes.
How will I use ritual?
I think this is more, to me,
bigger.
It's more of it's bigger. But that doesn't mean, I mean, you have a ritual of like meditation.
Yeah.
But your ritual might include lighting a candle and turning out the lights or spraying some lavender spray, whatever it may be. You may have small rituals that indicate to your body, it's time to relax now. It's time to have grace now.
Cut that shit out now.
It's time to cut that shit out because we don't have time for it, Suze.
I do. I guess I already have one in place, which is every evening around this time, it's happening right now as we record this. When I step out of my office into the living room, the whole room is lit up with candles on timers.
Yes, Suze.
So I walk out and my body goes, oh, it's evening time. It's my version of a glass of wine because I don't drink.
Yes. Yeah. Susie. Yes.
All right.
That's a perfect example.
Ease your chattering mind. It's time to calm down.
Ease your chattering mind.
Nice. Yep. I like that.
So Kross believes that, again, there will be a very unique combination of tools that will help each person. We're not all the same, but you can find some things that work for you, some things that don't, and that's okay. But I was intrigued by this entire concept and really thinking about like the appreciation for the inner voice and all the good things it does for us. And just trying to, when it gets stuck, like it's like a record that's got a little dent in it. It's like repeat, repeat, repeat. How can we step back and help it move forward and get back on track with all of the good things that it typically helps us with?
Yeah. This is sparking my brain into a sparktopus.
Oh, I'm so glad. Well, let's talk about what do we make of it?
Well, You want to go?
I mean, I have a few, mostly awareness. I can't say enough about awareness. For any of these techniques to work, you must first be able to realize you are in a spiral of chatter.
Yeah.
What's happening right now is chatter. These aren't true thoughts. These aren't facts about me. This is a negative thought loop stuck on replay. That's it.
Yeah. I
That's
think
all
I
that
am
is.
getting, I feel like I am getting better at that.
Uh-huh.
Recognizing it and catching it.
Yeah.
Sometimes not always able to slip it out of the gear right away.
Yep.
You know what I'm trying to get to the bottom of?
What?
I observe this thing in myself. Hi, is this TMI listeners? You be the judge.
We'll see.
I observe this thing in myself that for some reason I go through these periods in my life where there's something about when I take a shower in the morning, like I work out, then I take a shower. I don't know why, but it will kick up some of this repetitive negative thinking. And Laura, I'm thinking it could be as simple as there's something in my field of vision. I haven't identified what it is, but I notice when I'm getting ready in the morning, for some reason, those old ruminations and those old chatters and those old like relitigating things and things like that come to me in that period in the bathroom. And I haven't figured out why.
That is so.
Maybe we need to remodel the bathroom.
I think remodel the bathroom, first of all.
It happens almost when it's happening, when that's kicked up, and it doesn't always happen. Right now, I feel like I'm sort of not there, but there are times when I'm just like every day, like clockwork in the bathroom, this repetitive negative thinking happens.
That is so interesting. I'm searching my brain for anything I might have read in the book that like talks about a cause of it, which I think is interesting. He doesn't explain like why this happens, just that it does happen.
What I observe in myself though is my eyes throughout, as we all do as we move through our day, my eyes or my ears will pick something up and the connective tissue of thoughts will lead me down neural tributaries.
Oh yeah.
And for some reason, there's something, I got to keep a close eye on it. I don't know what it is.
Suze, but I think this is so normal. And for me, it could be, I'm in the kitchen. I am getting something out of a cabinet. My eye catches on the jar of peanut butter.
Yes.
Right. I go about my business. I do my thing. Then I'm sitting down and I'm like, I don't feel good. And I don't feel good about myself. Why am I not feeling good about myself?
Yes.
Let me trace back my thoughts. What did I just do? Well, I just did this. And then I came in here and then I went back and then I looked when I looked in the cabinet, I saw that peanut butter jar. I remembered the fight that my brother and I got into in junior high when he threw a jar of peanut butter at me.
Yes.
And I still feel in the pit of my stomach bad about that fight that we had.
Yes.
And so I have to trace back to some little thing, like you said, a neural pathway. It went flying back to the past.
That's right. And they zip so quickly, just so quickly. And just dear, gentle, sweet sparklers, Laura's talking about her play Electra Speaks, which really does.
Which also starred Susan Blackwell.
What?
Oh no.
In my youth,
not that one.
upon the boards. And she's Scottish too. But yes, it is things that are that small and just tangents upon tangents. That reminds me of that very excellent episode of The West Wing where Josh Lyman is triggered by the sound of there's something about the Christmas carolers that are singing in the lobby ends up, spoiler alert, if you haven't watched that episode from 20 years ago, fuck you. But that's the trigger that brings up this trauma.
You've had plenty of time.
You have plenty of time.
The West Wing.
But yes, it is that quick and that slippery. And I'd like to figure out what it is.
Well, I do think it is a worthy, because I think I learned to do this from a therapist. I think it is a worthy assignment to trace back to like, wait a minute. What was it? Is it the perfume I put on that reminds me of that girl from middle school?
Yes.
What is it? And trace it back to that and then maintain that distance. There's something so interesting to me about marveling at like, wow, wow, our brain is amazing. It went flying back to age 14 in a split second.
It retrieved that out of the files. Yes.
That's right. It
Yeah.
retrieved that out of the files.
A few more things that come to mind on this topic. That example that you gave, when your brain was developing and you were sent to your room to think about what you had done wrong.
Yeah.
And then to
Yeah.
come out and present your thesis on what you had done wrong.
Here's what's wrong with me.
Here's
Yeah.
what's wrong with me. That whole thing. I like this practice, which I think that you and I cultivate. Frankly, I feel like we were doing it today.
Oh, yeah.
Taking a pause and sort of thinking about what you/I/we have done well.
Yes, Suze, because my example is like, to me, evidence of how incomplete my learning was around this. It was associated with, well, am I able to point out everything that's wrong with me? I most certainly am. I could list it before you could even think about it. I could tell you everything that's wrong with me. But I was not given the counterpoint to it, which is also within yourself, are the answers that you need, is the intuition. It can guide you to your best possible self as well. And I wasn't really given any of that. That took so much more time to develop, because I had at that point such a close relationship with this chatter in my head being associated with negative. But I like that practice.
Yeah.
No, I just want to say, I like what you're saying of like, what do we do well? One of our clients, Sarah, has mentioned, like making a list of what she did accomplish during the day instead of what she should accomplish today. And it has a similar feel to me. That's like, oh my gosh, let's create a neural pathway that goes directly from here to thoughts of what I've done well, thoughts of how great I'm doing, and reinforce that pathway instead.
Yeah. Other thoughts that came up while you were sharing this beautiful spark is I probably have talked about this on the podcast before, or maybe I haven't. I don't fucking remember, you guys. One of the best explanations of fear versus intuition, meaning when am I experiencing intuition and when am I experiencing fear? Like if you're trying to assess if you want to take a creative risk or not, how to parse it. And one of the best explanations I've heard of this is a tool that I received from Marie Forleo, which is when you're considering a potential creative risk you're going to take and you have a sense of expansiveness, like even a sense of physical expansiveness, that is like intuition. And when you have a sense of contraction around something, or even when you're sort of like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that thing I've been asked to do. Like if you have a sense of contraction, that's what I've sort of started paying attention to now.
Yeah.
Does something give me a sense of expansiveness or does it give me a sense of contraction? And if it's expansive, I move towards it. And if it's contraction, I get the fuck away from it. Does that make sense?
I love it. It makes such perfect sense.
That's the thing I thought of. Here's some other weird shit I thought of while you were talking.
Okay, what?
That story that you told about Bailey being afraid of the Santa Clauses and coaching herself, that is a beautiful story. And I also thought, one, what do we make of it? Could be a horror screenplay where the child like slowly coaches themselves to be like, it's okay. It's not going to hurt me. It's just a doll. It's not going to hurt me. And then she gets close enough to touch it and then embrace it. And then we see its eyes pop open and it has her in its clutches. That is the first scene before credits roll on some crazy haunted Santa doll horror movie.
I feel like it might be a Chucky movie, but it's the Christmas version.
Chucky Saves Christmas. Yes, Laura.
We need this to come out December 15th.
Thanksgiving Day in theaters. Absolutely. Which reminded me of your friend Eric Stone Street did a beautiful like little capsule guest appearance on American Horror Story. Did you see that?
Oh, I haven't seen that. Did he really?
It was too scary for Susan and I've never forgotten it, but it was the first season of American Horror Story. So if you haven't seen it, fuck you.
Oh my God. I have not seen it. That stuff is too scary for me.
He has all of these phobias and he's going to this therapist to work out his phobias. He has a phobia that seems irrational, and it turns out Bailey was right and Eric Stone Street was right. That Santa is haunted. And then I think I've said this before, but that idea of historically distancing yourself, like thinking about like 10 years from now, when I'm thinking about all the rumination around this problem, cast yourself 10 years forward, or even think about your ancestors. And I think I told you that story about how I was going through this like breakup and trying to make this tough decision about breaking up. And I went and I stood at this graveyard and I was like, 100 years from now, when I'm under the ground, like it doesn't matter. Like just it matters to me so much today.
It doesn't matter.
And I'm just like on fire with it. But it really, like in the grand scheme of things.
In our house, Wes would say, it don't make a damn bit of difference. And I don't know what character that is or where it comes from.
That disrupts your rumination and co-rumination.
God, it makes me laugh all the time. It don't make a damn bit of difference. And always it's like, you know what? You're right.
You know, I feel like I love this spark, Laura, because I feel like it, if we can get our minds right, if we can get our thoughts right, it is, I don't know what percentage of the battle it is, but it seems like a really big percentage of the battle.
It's a huge percentage. It's such a huge percentage of it because it's really that idea of like, it's us against us. It's me against me. And it's really just like, I don't want to be in a battle with myself. I actually do not want to be in battle. I want to be in harmony with myself.
Yeah. And going back to the point that you made about neurodivergence, we were having this conversation today in one of our SparkFile groups. And one of our group participants was talking about how they had stumbled onto this discovery where, because different people's brains work differently, we're talking about creative goals, because different people's brains work differently, your brain may need to do something that seems strange to others. Like you may need to play a video game before you engage with the creative work that's going to advance you towards your creative goal. And I just feel like there's something about that speaks to this.
I'll jump in because I think that it all has to do with knowing your own brain. Know thyself.
Yes.
It comes to that. Then you make empowered choices of like, okay, what's best for my brain right now is to do this. And then do that. Perfectly viable choices and maybe different from what I would choose for my brain. But having that awareness, having that understanding of how our brains best work and how we can support them in the work that they do, I think is essential. I don't think we were taught to really give this much thought to our own brains.
No, I feel like this is something, again, back to your earlier question about when were you first aware of this ticker tape running through your mind? I don't know, 5 years ago. I feel like it was super recent.
I mean, I think I had college professors who attempted to instill it, but it takes so much time, I think, to get it unless you're actively deciding, I want to learn this.
Yeah.
But most of us, I don't know, that's a generalization, but many of us don't know that it's something that needs to be learned or can be learned. And it takes a long time, therapy and other ways to like sort of realize we have more agency over what is happening in our minds and what is happening in our bodies than we are taught to believe.
Yeah.
And I think that means like having also the empathy and the kindness for yourself and the voice in your head. I mean, I'll just say this. We've talked about this before, this idea of like, in regard to our creativity, the stories we tell ourselves to keep ourselves from telling our stories. And you and I talk about this concept and how easy it is for people to get very attached to that story.
Yeah.
I can't create because I have to pack everyone's lunch in the morning and I don't have time before I leave for work. I can't create because I didn't go to a proper school to teach me to create. I can't create because I'm a middle child and and then mix them all up. Take all of the reasons, mix them into like a cookie batter and just be like, these are all the reasons why I can't create. And I'm very attached to these stories. I don't want to relinquish them. And it doesn't feel like I have any power to relinquish them, but we do. We have more say over that. We can, it's like if our fist is gripping that reason why we can't create so tightly, we actually can pry our little fingers off of it. We can loosen our grip.
That fist of rumination. I appreciate this very much, Laura Camion. I feel like the work continues. The good work continues.
I will leave you with this one little quote then. Probably, I may be saying Eckhart Tolle.
I've heard it pronounced Eckhart Tolle.
I've heard it pronounced Eckhart Tolle.
That always reminds me of Toll House Cookies. His name always reminds me. Eckhart Toll House Cookies.
Eckhart Toll House Cookies said, "What a liberation to realize that the voice in my head is not who I am. Who am I then? The one who sees that."
That's right.
People, we are not that voice in our head. That voice in our head is trying to help us. Sometimes it gets off track. We can help it get back on track.
Laura, I love this so much. And I'm so thankful for this beautiful spark that you made for us and for all the people.
I'm so happy that you liked it. There's so much to talk about.
I did like it. And I think that's it. Oh, so good. This episode of The Spark File was made on the lands of the Lenape people. And as always, we hope this put another bunch of sparks in your file. Hey, listen, if there's a spark you'd like us to explore, or if you'd like to learn more about how to coach with us to bring your creative ideas to life, email us at thesparkfile@gmail.com or submit it through our website, thesparkfile.com.
Hey, we'll even take your feedback, but you know the price of admission. First, you have to share a creative risk that you've taken recently.
You can follow us on social at The Spark File, and be sure to subscribe, rate, and 5-star review this podcast. It really does help other listeners to find us. Hey, if you like this podcast, we hope you'll share it with people that you love. And if you didn't like it, I want you to go into your room and I want you to think about why you didn't like it. And then I want you to come back out here and I want you to tell me.
Oh, dear.
Oh, Lord. So shitty. So shitty.
If something lights you up and gets your creative sparks flying, please know that we are writing you a forever permission slip to make that thing that's been knocking at your door. It is your turn to take that spark and fan it into a flame.
You know, you got to take it
and
make it. Oh, heavens.
Ooh.
Oh, my precious jewels.
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I want to make or how I want to be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
Hi, friends. Susan Blackwell from the Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the Chief Creative Officer and Chief Marketing Officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you and to save with early bird discounts. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk. Go to thesparkfile.com/Illume and join us for Illume.